be a really great spouse, be a really great parent, be a really great friend, be a really great leader. I can't do them all four at the same time. And so trying to figure out, I think about it like a juggler, right? Which balls, if you drop them, will bounce back to you, and which ones will shatter. And so I think about them as like rubber and glass. And so there are times when I know the kids or Chase need my full attention.
From leasing beginnings to business development leadership, Danielle Koontz combines operational expertise with relationship mastery at RangeWater Real Estate. Her authentic approach balances analytics with genuine connection, skills honed through years of on-site experience. Through industry challenges, she's become both a trusted client advisor and respected mentor across Texas multifamily circles.
The traditional path in multifamily is confusing to me. If you want to elevate in this industry, you now need to go sit in the back office and post payments. You need to call residents for delinquency. You're the assistant manager. And if you do that really well, which two very different skill sets, then maybe we trust you to run a P&L and manage people. But that could not be my path. I would die in the middle. I need to find a way to bypass around that. I started building really strong relationships with different clients on deals that I was working on. And I quickly realized that the relationship part for me comes very naturally. The curiosity in me gets the information that we need, but I didn't have the financial background.
Where do you see the next leg of your career going?
It's a great question.
Danielle, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited. You brought your entire family here, which was amazing. So we gave, they were the first kids in the RV.
I love it. Well, I have a very curious 3-year-old and a 16-month-old who wants to do whatever his older sister does.
So you had to bring everybody. I love it.
That's right.
Okay. I want to start with something we just talked about, but I find very fascinating. You don't drink coffee or caffeine.
I don't drink coffee. I sort of joke that I want to be like Jesus, water or wine for me. But it was never like an idea that I didn't want to drink coffee. It was just, I never picked it up in college. I never picked it up early 20s. And people said, as soon as you have a baby, like to survive, you'll have to drink coffee. And I never picked it up with Caroline. And it's not that I am trying to avoid caffeine. Like I'll drink a Dr. Pepper every once in a while, but I never picked it up. And then I thought, if I haven't, why add a thing to my already busy day that I need to depend on?
Yeah, no, 100%. I remember I never drank coffee until like 23, which isn't like super unreasonable. But I remember looking, I would travel a lot the first year at work. And I remember like walking in the airport and seeing these massive Starbucks lines of people just waiting like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. I remember being like, I'm never going to be that person. And then all of a sudden you start drinking a little bit of coffee and then you realize it like helps you and then you drink a little bit more and then you become dependent on it as like, I think 90% of Americans drink coffee or something ridiculous.
Well, and it's so funny in a role like mine. So I lead a biz dev team and I have been in that space for almost 10 years. And people don't always want to give you an hour of their time for lunch or happy hour or dinner. So the easiest ask is, do you want to grab coffee? And everyone says yes, but then it's a little bit awkward that I have to say when I'm making my order, like, oh, I actually don't drink coffee. I'll get tea or I'll get sparkling water or I'll get something. And it is a funny conversation starter most of the time, whether I know the person or not, for them to see like, oh, you invited me to coffee, but you don't drink coffee.
I had a friend who, for a little period of time I didn't drink. I had a friend who also didn't drink and he would do because instead of dinner in the evening, what else would you do? You get a drink or something. So on a date, he would do drinking dates, but like he would only get sparkling water, and then like they would end up also getting sparkling water because they're not the only person that's going to drink.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's the adult version of that.
Thankfully there's not that stigma around coffee, and people will get it whether I do or not.
Exactly. But you do drink espresso martinis.
I do.
Which is great.
I guess I'm an evening coffee gal instead of a morning coffee.
Amazing. Okay. So I want to talk and start a little bit about like where you grew up and your upbringing, and we can go from there.
Yeah, it's a funny thing to think about how all of those things shaped where you ended up. And you never think about that when you're a kid. I'm in the multifamily industry, and I didn't know that career existed because I am from lovingly the middle of nowhere. It is a map dot in the middle of central Illinois. We have one blinking red light, not even a stoplight. Like, you have to go 20 miles to Walmart. You have to go 20 miles to main restaurants. And so it was very insulated. And I just grew up thinking that that's sort of what the world was. My parents are both one of six. And so my mom, 6 girls, my dad, 6 boys. So I've got a lot of cousins, and that was just built-in friends. And so small town life, you're sort of, wrapped up in what's happening around you. And that was my family and my cousins. And you could play 3 sports because you had to field a team when your town is only 750 people. So yeah, I think looking back on that, I'm really glad that that's true. But as we think about things for our kids, it's like, I walk to school. Is that going to be an option for my children in Dallas? Like, one of the reasons we bought our house is it's across from an elementary school, and that's a thing that we can do. But I rode my bike until it was dark outside. That's definitely not something you can do in Dallas. And so just really interesting to think about the way that my life has sort of weaved and gotten me here, but it certainly did not start out that way.
6 boys and 6 girls.
Yeah.
Including your mom and dad.
Yeah.
Have you ever talked to them about that? Like their upbringing?
A little bit. And it's, sometimes you see personality traits and you don't know why. And then as you get older, like, oh, I can see why being, birth order of one of 6 matters. So my mom is second and my dad is second to last. And so my mom is definitely more the peacekeeper. Like, you could tell with 6 girls in the house, she was a little bit the mediator sometimes. And, so she's in conflict, right? She's not super vocal to say, this is how I feel, because you're navigating 6 personalities for your entire life. And my dad is just sort of like, he'll go along with anything we want. And he certainly has opinions, but he is very content doing what the family is doing what we want to do. And I think that's because a lot of his life was his older brothers sort of saying, this is the way, and him saying, okay. And that's actually one of the traits I admire most about him. He is one of the most content humans on the planet. And sometimes when I feel like I'm not doing enough, or we don't have enough, or, what's the next thing in my career path, I just look at my dad. Man, he is just so content with where he is, who he is, how our life works. Like, he's a wonderful guy.
Do you think that's just like a natural thing that he has been born with, or is it like a developed?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Probably a little of both. I think you probably have a little bit of natural born with type personality, but I also think for him, there was a lot he had to do or that someone else imposed on him. And he was just like, okay, yeah, we'll make the best of that. And so he's always been, willing to do anything, but very content with whatever it is.
And what about your mom? What is she like?
Oh, she's the best. She is the most selfless woman on the planet. And sometimes I get in my head and I think, in 30 years, like, will I be willing to do all those things for our kids? They both live in Illinois still. And because of the jobs that Chase and I both have, we require a lot of help. We love our family and, want to maybe even continue growing it. But that requires so many extra hands. And my parents are both retired, and they have said, whenever, for however long, we'll come. And when they're here, they want to spend time with us. They want to spend time with the kids. But when the kids are at school, Chase and I are at work, they are, what can we do? Like, are cleaning the house, organizing things, mean, our life just wouldn't run without them. And I have incredible in-laws too. Chase's parents are the same. They help a ton, and we couldn't do the things we do, have the jobs we have without the additional help that we have in them.
Or is his parents in Dallas?
No, they're in Indiana. So Chase and I are both Midwesterners who found our way to Texas separately and then met here.
That's awesome. My sister is actually going through that right now. She just had a kid about a month ago. And
She's in it.
She's in it. Yeah, she's in it. It's the first, I guess, first niece or nephew.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just seeing it for her too. My parents actually, I was born in the U.S. in the Bay Area, actually near Stanford.
Nice.
And I when I was 12, I moved to India, and I was there for 6 years. I went to an international school, and my parents continued to live there. But about a year ago, they moved mainly full time to Palm Springs, where my sister and her husband are doctors. And I just see how beneficial it is for her. Like, similarly, I don't know how she'd run her life. I mean, they're both doctors. They have a dog. They now have a kid. And my parents are just like there full time for the dog, even because they're traveling. My sister's 32, so she's in that, her and her husband are in that stage where like every month they have a wedding for a friend.
Yes.
So they're constantly traveling.
The wedding
for these
wave, we
the
call
wedding
that.
wave, exactly. So they're constantly traveling for that. So no, I I totally, while I can't empathize directly because I don't have a kid or wife, I definitely can see how stressful it is and hard to manage.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where we sort of joke that like grandparents nearby is the only parenting hack that's real. But the next best thing is grandparents who are willing to come in whenever we need them and stay as long as we need, which is so kind.
Actually, a fun question. So you have a 18-month-old and almost a 4-year-old. Mm-hmm. What are some like hacks that you've like learned over the last 4 years of raising kids that you didn't know before?
There are none. There are no hacks other than if you have grandparents nearby or willing to help. But I would say, more of the lesson that I'm still learning is even though, and this is more true for Caroline, she's older, but even though she's inquisitive and, so interested in things and so verbal and like feels like we should talk to her like an adult, we fall into the trap sometimes of expecting her to respond like an adult, which is so unfair. She's 3.5. And so really trying to be honest with her and have conversations, sometimes hard ones, but also not expecting her brain to be able to rationalize things away. We can do that as adults. And, I think that has helped me from a patience standpoint. She doesn't understand why I'm leaving on a trip. And so like one of the funny things is I'll get my suitcase out and she'll say, am I going or no? Because she wants to know, is this a vacation? Like, is this a family thing we're doing? Or is this a trip you're going by yourself? And so one of the things I'm trying to commit to this year is when it is something that I can, bringing her along. She's old enough. She's a great flyer. We moved to Palo Alto when she was 12 weeks old, so she's lived in an airport, probably flown more than my parents, honestly, before we moved to Texas. Mm-hmm. I would just say, kind of going back to the hacks, it's more talking to them, but talking to them as you would, a friend or an adult, but not expecting that response to be as rationalized. And then the other one, which cannot be overstated, is find a great partner. And you saw it in Chase today. I mean, we are a really good team. Our skills are not always the same, but we're really aligned in values. And so he takes some of the things that are really frustrating to me. I take some of the things that are really frustrating to him, and we're just a really good team. And, I think we've known each other for 10 years. We've been married for almost 8, and I appreciate and love him more now than I ever have.
How did you guys meet?
It is a little bit of a funny story. Apps existed when we met, but we sort of met the old-fashioned way in a bar in Dallas, and it was because, and this person takes a little bit of credit for our meeting, I was with a friend, and Chase was with a friend, and I knew the person he was with. He's the younger brother of a good friend of mine in Dallas. And he saw that I was with a very beautiful blonde girl and wanted to talk to her. So he came over to me to get to her, which left Chase and I together.
That's pretty funny.
And they maybe talked for the rest of the evening, and Chase and I will be talking for the rest of our lives.
That's great. I love that. Something I'm really fascinated about is almost without fail, when you talk to somebody who has recently had a kid, my sister, the unanimous response is like, this was way crazier than I thought. Or like, there's no way you can prepare for this, or something along the lines of that. How does one actually like prepare? Like, can you actually prepare to be a parent? I have this notion in my mind that like I can, in some ways, like intellectualize the process of raising a kid and like study the science, because there's so many data points, and I'm sure so much research that has been done on how to raise kids effectively. But am I intellectualizing it too far, or is there some merit to that?
I think there's some merit to that. And, Chase is a researcher. He loves information. And he is someone who will dig to the depths of the internet or books or podcasts on any specific parenting thing as we're walking through it. So I think there is some merit to trying to have, at least for yourself and for you and your partner, understanding how do we want to handle these situations when they come up. But in the beginning, it's the first time in your life where someone has been 100% truly dependent on you. And I think the biggest realization for me was, man, I'm a selfish human. It's like, even though you love this person so very much and you would do anything for them, you still don't want to get out of bed every 2 hours. You still don't want to do all the things. You still sort of resent that, your husband can immediately go and live his life and it, is just different for you. And so I don't know if your sister feels that way, but that was something that was really hard for me to just wrap my head around, that I couldn't have over prepared for the realization of, man, one, this is harder than I expected, but also better than I expected. And then the self-reflection of like, oh my gosh, I am so selfish. And not in this like, and I want to change it way, just the realization of, okay, there are going to be many things now that I do that I don't feel like doing. Like when you're younger, right? Or at least for me, it's like if I didn't feel like going to the gym, I didn't go. That's not an option now. And so you love it once you're done. And it's like, oh, I'm so glad I did that thing. But there are also the minutiae of like, I don't want to wash the bottles. I'm exhausted. I don't want to do that thing. So I don't know that you can prepare really for that. And I would say, one of the hardest things that I was ill prepared for was grappling with, who am I now when my whole life, my sort of identity has been built around who I was at work? And is that going to look different when I can only give 80% today because something else cannot function without me? And I still fight that from I've got a full day of meetings and one of the kids is sick. You have to stay home and rearrange your life. And I think one of the ways I have really grown in that area, one is in the security of my faith. It's like my identity isn't found in who people think I am at work. That's a byproduct of what I hope is, coming out as the core values of my life. But it is a challenge to think about, how do I interact with the world in a different way when I can't give 100% like I used to.
Did you feel guilty
Yes.
about
Always
that way?
guilty. And not maybe in the way that you would traditionally think. I think at least for me, I feel guilty for wherever I feel like I'm dropping the ball. So I can either be a really great spouse, be a really great parent, be a really great friend, be a really great leader. I can't do them all four at the same time. And so trying to figure out, I think about it like a juggler, right? Which balls, if you drop them, will bounce back to you, and which ones will shatter. And so I think about them as like rubber and glass. And so there are times when I know the kids or Chase need my full attention. And I just have to be okay with emails stacking up, and I'll get to them when the kids are asleep. Or I need to be honest with Chase and say, hey, today work really needs my full attention. So if something comes up that we're not expecting, I need you to tap in for that. And that helps, but I would say a lot of females in our industry ask me, how do you feel 2 kids later? What would you have told your pre-kid self? It's like, they tell you parenting is hard. They don't tell you how hard working parenthood is, because you don't just automatically want to stop being who you were. You have gifts and you want to use them, and you want to do the happy hour, and you want to do the dinner, and you want to be included, and you have great ideas. And all of that is like, at least for me, I think those are my God-given talents and I want to use them well. But that doesn't mean I want to not be a present mom. That doesn't mean I don't want to spend a ton of time with them. But like, I did feel a little guilty at first that I never thought about being a stay-at-home mom. It still has never crossed my mind as like a thing I want to do. I want to work. I love what I do. This industry has been so good to me and I love it. But some days I think, should I love it less? Should I want to be home? It's just a strange, always, sometimes healthy, sometimes not tension in your mind.
In this season of your life, what are the rubber balls and what are the glass balls? Yeah. And does it change?
Yes, it does. And I think today I would tell you, like, the glass ones are time with Chase, alone time with Chase, because you very easily get into mom and dad mode. And I think a lot of people would tell you, like, that's okay. And we feel really differently about that. Like, we're better for them when we're really good. And you can't be really good if you're constantly distracted or not focused on each other. So that's a glass ball. And we're pretty good about saying, I need your full attention right now. And something else is going to have to move around. With the kids, it's, it changes. I think they're always a glass ball, but sometimes someone else can hold that ball. Like, only I can be Chase's wife. Only I can be Caroline and Clark's mom, but there are things that he can do or their grandparents can do that allow me to focus on something else. And then there are some things at work that are glass. And I just have to be really communicative of, this is a season. Like, right now I'm in a travel season. And normally I would say I travel once, maybe twice a month. Starting with NMHC in Vegas at the end of January, I have been on the road for 4 weeks in a row, and I have one more trip next week before it stops. And they're not for the full week. It's 2 days, 1 night, 3 days, 2 nights. Vegas was longer, but that is a season where I know I need to be in those places to set us up for the right track for the year. And Chase is really great with taking some of the other stuff that normally I would worry about.
How do you maintain a routine or a semblance of a routine when you're on the road?
You're asking the wrong lady about that, because I am not a routine gal. I think people around me sometimes would think I don't know how she survives this life. Like, I'm an organized person professionally, but my general like natural tendency is it doesn't need to be the same, and I'd actually prefer it to not. So other than brush my teeth, there's maybe not a thing I do every single day. Which when you say it out loud, some people are like, oh my gosh, how do you function? I was coming back from a trip last night and having a text conversation with a coworker who was at the happy hour with me before I went to the airport. And my flight was at 9, and I left the restaurant at like 7:15 in Atlanta. And he was like, why are you not already at the gate? I said, Steven, like I travel so frequently. If I was there an hour early, how much of my life would be wasted in an airport? Like I want to be walking to the gate with Chick-fil-A in my hand when they're calling my boarding group. Yeah. And I texted him when I got to the gate, and he was just like, it is wild to me how differently our brains work and how stressed that would make me and how perfectly fine you are with it.
That's really funny you bring that up because one would think that somebody who's traveling the road for 4 months across multiple cities is not routine oriented. But this is definitely not my natural state, which is really funny. Like I am a super routine oriented person normally. Like most of my days look the same in terms of like when I wake up, exercise, like all of that stuff. And it's been a really interesting experiment because the way I see like my life is I like chaos, but I like having a massive dichotomy of like chaos and stability, right? I'm okay with work being chaotic because that's just the nature of building a company. Yeah. It's always going to be chaotic, but I like to retreat back to like, okay, I have these like 1 or 2 non-negotiable kind of things in my routine. So it's been a really interesting experiment so far of just basically having every part of my life chaotic, right? Yeah. Like feels like building a company is hard enough. This is like putting it on steroids and making it like way harder.
You mean opening your eyes and having a family of 4 walk in your front door was not on your bingo card today?
It wasn't. But in hindsight, like David and Daniela are, we're all traveling together, and in hindsight, I just can't see this as something that I look back on and I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't do that, And after college, me and Kendrick, my co-founder, did like a 3-month backpacking trip across Europe. And we went to like 15 different countries and had we had no money, obviously, just graduated college. So in some cities where the hotels were way too expensive, we would like sleep. This was in the summer. We'd sleep on the fields. And we'd go to the coffee shops and brush our teeth. And that was like for 4 days. But I think the point is like in the moment that was like a little bit wild, but when you look back on it, it's like, it's a fun story.
And I think it reminds you of like, it was a season and you can. And that, like Chase and I say that to one another a lot. Like there are constants in our life, right? Like we're very convicted believers. And so like faith is a very important part of our life. And that is a constant. Each other, we're very committed to a covenant marriage and whatever it takes to make that work. And that is a constant. And our kids, like we want to be present for them, create memories for them, and also, lead them in a way that they want to choose the faith that we have because we're so convicted in it, but not force it on them. And so those are constants, sort of the pillars of our life. And then things move around it. And you just sort of work those other things into your life. Like I joked with a coworker recently, like, you wouldn't have wanted me as a supervisor pre-kids. I am such a better leader, employee, empathetic human, friend post-kids because I can see how chaos moves around it and how important keep the main thing, and everything else will figure its way out.
Yeah, that's great. That's one of our company values is keep the main thing, the main thing. There's you can call him a modern day philosopher, this guy called Naval Ravikant, and he talks about the 3 things that lead to kind of a fulfilling and happy life are, in his opinion, faith. So some belief in something. Kids usually is a form of purpose, and some mission in work. And as I'm talking to you, I'm kind of realizing that it seems like you're pretty grounded in all three things. Does the inside of your life reflect what an outsider sees? Do you feel fulfilled?
That's a great question. I do. I mean, there are days when I feel like I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing, but way more days than not, I am just so grateful for the life we have. I think a lot of folks would say they're either really happy in their personal life or really happy in their professional life, but not always both. And I have just had the extreme good fortune of like building the career first and sort of longing for the family, and then watching that exceed my wildest dreams in a partner who wants to chase things too, which is sort of funny because his name is Chase. But I think so we met when I was 28. I was 3 weeks away from being 29. So we got married when I was 31. And by small town, middle of nowhere, Illinois standards, that is like so old to find who you're going to do this life with. And so I think for me, it was sort of like, I'm going to chase career really hard so that I can sort of justify not having this other thing that people keep asking me about. And one of the not uncommon way, like the way that I got into this industry, I graduated college in 2009. I thought I was a marketing major. I thought I was going to live an ad agency life, like urban Chicago, very sexy ad campaign, kind of life. And coming out of the GFC, that just wasn't a choice. Nobody was hiring for that, and they certainly weren't hiring someone without experience. And so I had done a marketing internship for a family office who owned 5 duplex communities in my college town. And so a company called me and said, hey, we saw you did this in college. Would you want to come do this full time? At first I said, no, thank you. But they called back again. I said, okay, yeah, I'll give it a shot. I'll do this for 2 years, and then I'll go back to the life I had sort of planned. And like probably everyone else on this podcast who didn't feel like multifamily was the place for them, it just grabbed a hold of me. I loved leasing apartments. I loved both the immediate victory of like, I can close 5 deals in a day. That feels really good. And I can get to know a bunch of different people. And as I've already described, I'm not incredibly administrative oriented. And so I had a lot of help in some colleagues who would do some of the paperwork for me so that I could just run and lease. And I got a reputation for doing that. And because I had no geographic or personal obligations, I became the girl who just said yes. And it was like, can you go to Ohio for a week and help us fix a problem? Yes. Can you move to New Jersey for 3 months and help us fix a problem? Yes. Can you move to Cincinnati and lease up a brand new building? Yes. Can you move to Austin? Yes. Can you go to Birmingham for 3 months? Yes. And because I was able to say yes, and I know everyone does not have that luxury, I could move around a lot, see a lot, get exposed to a lot of different business plans, and that really sparked the curiosity in me of what else can I do? Because the traditional path in multifamily is confusing to me. You take your natural salespeople as leasing agents or leasing consultants, and you tell them, if you want to elevate in this industry, you now need to go sit in the back office and post payments. You need to call residents for delinquency. You're the assistant manager. And if you do that really well, which 2 very different skill sets, then maybe we trust you to run a P&L and manage people, which you have no training for in the previous 2 roles. And so like that still kind of blows my mind that that's the path. But I just knew very early on that could not be my path. I would die in the middle because I wouldn't be good at that. And so I just said, I need to find a way to bypass around that. And what do I do? And so I started building really strong relationships with different clients on deals that I was working on. And I would ask them questions like, why did you do this? Why did you buy this? What do you need me to do in order to do the thing you want to do. And I quickly realized that the relationship part for me comes very naturally. The curiosity in me gets the information that we need, but I didn't have the financial background. So while I was doing that, I went and I did a distance program MBA. So it was mostly online, but then you would kind of fly in and do a week at a time on campus. So I felt like I got to know both some of my classmates and have a little bit more traditional experience, even though it was mostly remote, because I didn't want to take time off. I didn't want to quit the thing I was doing to do a full-time MBA, which looking back, I thought I was tired then. That is not tired compared to having 2 children and also working, but it was a really great time in my life too, because it, again, sort of to your point, like it shows like that's chaotic, but it's a season and you can.
Totally. There's so many things that you just talked about that I really love. I think one of my favorite quotes is by this guy, David Senra. It's in my LinkedIn bio. It's mute the world and build your own. And I think that really applies to what you're saying, which is there's no like perfect path for anything, right? Like, and oftentimes if you're following the normal path or the conventional path, you're going to get like conventional results. I mean, that's just the way you can't expect extraordinary results from like doing something that's like ordinary.
So true.
And I think like the fact that you kind of took that on yourself and like charted your own path is something that I think other people should take inspiration from, candidly, right? Like there's no, I mean, if somebody were to tell me like, oh, I can start a company and like, first I have to do all these things. Like, I mean, you don't. Yeah. There's so many ways. And I think even on my side, when building a company in the early days, one of the things that affected me and affects many other people is you're so deer in the headlights that you start leaning on everybody else for advice, rather than just like trusting yourself. And you think that like, because this person did this, that they know the best way, and you listen to them and you end up realizing that their circumstances or their domain understanding of themselves and their skills and all of this stuff is unique to them. That doesn't always apply to you, right? And I think another thing you mentioned that I really like is I think it's really important to know your strengths and where you spike. Totally. Right? Like I personally, I think similar to you, I feel much more comfortable building relationships and being curious and asking questions and all of that stuff. And it's not only do I feel like is more of my skill set, it also energizes me. Yes. It feels fun. And I think at least on the when you're starting a company as a founder, something that you feel like you have to do is like, I just need to do everything that's hard and like suck it up. And like in many ways that's true. But I think what's more valuable for the company is to find what you spike in positively and where your strengths are and what energizes you, and then try to find the roles, because there's many people, you know, you said the finance side, there's many people in the world that actually get energized by that, that are strong in that, that will do well in that. So it's really important to like understand your strengths and play towards your strengths. I think a common misconception, at least in the interview process, is people trying to, you know, understand your weaknesses and working on your weaknesses. In some ways, I think you should let your weaknesses be your weaknesses, and really just focus and hone in on your strengths.
Yeah. And I mean, that's one thing as we think about, you know, sort of how do you become a functioning employee or wife or mom in the chaos when the to-do list is longer than you have time to do. I keep going back to, and this is advice that I have been given, but I also share with my team. It's like, what are the things only you can do? And seems like a very simple question, but when you ask it, sometimes the answer is, what are the things that can be done, even stylistically, if it's not your way? And that honestly took having my first baby to really let that go, because I wanted to hold things really tight and do them in the way that I thought they should be done. But a lot of times there's a lot of ways to do things, and most of it's just stylistic preference. Some of the things have a very specific way, but not very many of them. And so for my team, I really am trying to get them to see, and we're a lean team, so sometimes, of course, you have to do things you don't want to do, or that don't come naturally to you. But for the most part, like, you're bringing more value to the organization, doing the things only you can do, than trying to be exactly the same at every single category of your job in your life.
I see it as like, let's say there's like 1 unit of effort produces like 1 unit of output. Like, if you find what your strength is and you exert that 1 unit of effort, that's going to be 10 units of outcome or output, right? And I think like just framing it that way and understanding what your strengths are, you're literally just contributing to the organization more if you're just like really focusing on your strengths. But exactly right. Like, life isn't perfect, and you're going to have to do things that you don't like. And in some ways, doing things that you don't like, in my opinion, is good, because it just like, it's the nature of life. You can't avoid it. You're going to do things that you don't like. You're going to deal with emotions that you don't want to deal with.
That's right.
And that's just life. The third thing that you said that I really like too, that I want to make sure people understand, is I'm of the same belief that like in your 20s, I really think that like you should say yes. So in your early 20s, usually you don't have any network. You don't know what you want to do. You are new to the working world. And the only thing you really have usually is time and effort. And I think it's super important in your early days to do exactly what you said, which is to say yes. Because it's almost like, the way I see it in my mind is like, you're just entering the battlefield or the maze, and you haven't even touched any surface area. You don't know anything. And the only way you can learn is by like doing a bunch of things, exposure, exploration. So then you can start understanding like, what do I not like? What do I like? And I think it's super, super important. And I think the other thing that people, I really feel this way. I think early in your career, you should not optimize for like salary. You should optimize for like learning and growing and getting opportunities and doing things that will give you exposure to cool people. When we started our company, my co-founder, who worked at SpaceX and got a mechanical engineering degree from USC, offered to work as a leasing consultant at a family-run property management company in a Class D building for free, and worked there for 9 months. No pay, because we wanted to learn the industry. Yeah. And we felt that exposure to the industry, if we wanted to build a company, and understanding the problems at the ground level, if we wanted to build a company, was so much more valuable than $80,000 or $60,000. In some ways, people don't have that luxury, right? Yeah. Like he had free housing. Ultimately, the guy paid him, but it was like 30, 40K or something like that. But I just think that like more people should say yes early on, because it just gives you like so much exposure, and you don't know where that can lead.
Yeah, so true. And I feel like, as you said, not everyone has the luxury or the life circumstance to say yes to the things that sort of allow for some of that. But I do, I'm involved in the Crew Network and have a leadership role in one of the committees in Crew Dallas. And so we do panels at different universities and high schools about real estate careers. And, I'm very passionate about that, because when I was in high school, I didn't know this industry existed because there were no apartments where I was from. And so this commercial real estate was not a thing I even considered. And so giving people exposure to that. But a lot of the questions we get, or the frame of reference that we're trying to give to people are, you don't have to decide today if you're going to be a specialist or you're going to be a generalist. Like, it takes trying a couple of things as a generalist to decide what you want to specialize in. Now, some people know from a very young age, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer. But there are so many avenues to this business particularly that, like, if you didn't try stuff, you wouldn't know that was a possibility. And if you didn't try something that even you thought for sure you would love and you hated it, start over, and that's okay. I'm, maybe a little bit hypocritical in that I've been in this industry 16 years, and the industry is all that I know. But I've had a lot of different jobs within the industry and sort of charted a path that, to your point, like, plays on my strengths, but doesn't ignore my weaknesses, just kind of humbles me a little bit and reminds me, like, I need other people to do those things who have a very different skill set than I have.
One thing we didn't talk about growing in the early part of the podcast is growing up. You mentioned your town was like 750. I don't know if that was, is
true.
that okay? True. What was money's role in your like early life growing up?
Yeah. That's a very good question. And Chase and I did a couple of summers ago this thing called generous giving, and they ask you to think about your very first memory of money. And I don't have an exact memory, but the theme is that it wasn't ours, it was God's, and that my parents spent it together. So when I was, like, if my mom and I were out shopping, one, it's how I learned to do percentages, because I wanted to see, like, oh, that was 40% off. What is that actual dollar amount? My dad's a math teacher, but it was really like, if it was over a certain amount of money, she would say, like, I want to call and talk to your dad. Not, I'm going to ask him permission, but like, I'm going to call and talk to your dad. And I think that those two things, it's not our money, it's God's, and this is a partnership and this is our money to spend together, we're really, or to steward together, were really foundational in how I think about things. And, you know, Chase and I, because we met later in life and we had like established careers, or I did, he had the start of a wonderful career, but he is 5 years younger than I am. So we were just at different parts in our career. We didn't really ever have to have the like difficult money conversation, because I had been working for 8 years when we met, and, you know, had very little obligation by way of expense, because I had, when you, again, work in this industry, all those places I said yes to, I didn't pay to live there, or I paid an extremely low amount. And so I was able, even though the very first leasing job I had, it's funny that you said your friend worked there for free. I felt they offered me at $12 an hour, and I felt so proud that I negotiated that to $12.50. And now when I'm writing or reviewing pro formas for leasing people, it's like $22 an hour, which is great. And I have to remind myself, like, that was almost 20 years ago. Inflation is a thing. But like, I remember being so proud of that. Like, yes, $12.50. But I also remember, like, my mom and I sitting on the couch, and, you know, rent is $534, and this groceries are this much. Like, is there any leftover? Which is just I think is a good thing to think about stewardship, but funny to look back on that and see how different things are now.
Where does your ambition come from?
Ooh. I think if I'm being really honest about that, like a deep-rooted desire for people to like me. And that has changed quite a bit too. I think in the beginning, whether it was in school, I was definitely the girl that like the class rolled their eyes at, because the teacher would say, any more questions? And I would have one. And everybody else would just want to go home. But I think I've always been naturally curious, which leads to like, and another thing, and another thing, and another thing, which for me is energizing. And for other people sometimes is like, let's go. But in the working world, I think it started as like, I'm going to work really hard for this sort of desire to be well thought of, well liked. And that's one of the, you know, challenges to navigate when you're from a really small place. Everyone knows everything about your life. And so perception is important. And whether it's good or it's bad, the rumors or the talk will ensue in a town of 750 people. And so I sort of grew up by accident, just like being very aware of what people thought of me. And I definitely took that into the working world and just said, like, whether or not I'm the most skilled at it, like, I'll be the one who works the hardest. And I think that is something that has really evolved, specifically, you know, as I've gotten more and more convicted in my faith. Being in a business development / sales role, I like to think that I do it relationally, and so it doesn't feel like this transaction thing. But it is sales at its core, and you have to get comfortable with people telling you no, which I wasn't good at in the beginning. I took it really personally. I didn't understand. I then like honestly tried to overdo it. And the more and more secure I got in who I was in the Lord, the less I had to rely on, like, how do I react when people don't give me the response that I was hoping for? And that has been and will continue to be, I think, something that I struggle with or at least wrestle with. But if I'm honest, I think that's probably the root of the ambition, is like this drive for likability or credibility.
I didn't ask you, do you have siblings?
I have one brother,
Yeah.
younger.
Younger.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the stereotypical eldest daughter, I think I am that, with the caveat that I am not organized.
You're not organized. How are you in school? I'm just curious, grades wise and stuff. Were you academic?
Yes. My dad was a high school math teacher, and my mom was a preschool teacher for my entire life. And so that is a very good balance of science and art. And so it was less about, I think, intellectually, like they didn't push us to have good grades. It was more like from a respect standpoint. I think some of the things I see in the world today, it's like parents will defend their children with less reverence to authority. And that was not how it was in our household. It was like, we're going to believe the teacher or the principal or whatever. Not that we don't believe you, but like they are the authority. And so I just grew up with a great respect for that and then tried really hard as a result, I think.
Where do you see the next leg of your career going?
That's a great question. I think I am in the season. I'm still in the doing season. Like I would say I'm squarely in the middle third of my career. And it's that balance between how do I go from only doing to doing and delegating while vision casting. And I think that's a really hard part of your career to be in, because when you're in the doing phase only, like that's a very clear path. And I think when you get into the vision casting and delegating phase, like that's a really clear path. But when you're in this, where am I spending my time? Is it in the doing? Is it in the planning? Is it in the vision casting and motivating? I still am really kind of doing that dance today, and some days better than others. But one of the things that a mentor of mine said when we talk about why we love what we do, she said, I like to do really hard things with really smart people that I like. And that resonated with me in that I think no matter which phase of my career I'm in, I'm still going to want to do hard things. I'm still going to want to ask, why do we do it that way? I'm still going to want to, be curious about what else could we do, but with relationships at the core. And I think, that is one thing as I now lead a team, which is relatively new. I've been doing that for less than a year. I'm trying to impart in them one of the luxuries I had in the early parts of my career, which is a supervisor who really trusted me. And sometimes I'm not sure why, because I didn't have the experience for her to trust me, but I knew that I could take risk and she would be there, whether I did the right thing or the wrong thing. So I am really trying to impart that on my team that, yes, there are things that they may do that I would do differently, but I'm still there to support the decision they made. Like, talk me through why you did that. Here's what I would have done and here's why I would have done it, but we might get to the exact same outcome. And so really just giving them some, I think, trust and giving them some security that they can take a risk, they can do a thing, even if they're not 100% sure. Because in this business, mostly things are fixable. I mean, we sort of joke in the property management side of the business, like, we're in the business of recovery because there's a human element to this and somebody's going to make a mistake. And so we can be the best partner to our clients, not by telling them we're never going to make a mistake. That would be a lie. Telling them when we make a mistake, here's how we recover it. Here's what you can expect from us. Because stuff happens that we don't expect to happen all the time. And usually it's not for anyone wanting to do the wrong thing or trying to be a bad actor. It was either I didn't have the right information, I made the wrong decision with the information I had, or I found something I wasn't expecting. And then they have to communicate that up the chain. And so as I'm talking to clients and to the team, it's like, it's in how we recover. And so like you have permission to make a choice, and maybe it'll be the wrong one and we'll fix it. And I want that to mark the next, whatever the next part of my career is. I want that to mark it. And I also want my team, myself, anyone that I interact with, it's hard from a boundary perspective with clients sometimes, but like I used to think, oh, I have this work life and I have this other life. It's one life. And it is integration. I don't think work-life balance is a real thing. I think it is sometimes you go really hard at one thing and sometimes you go really hard at another. And it is how it integrates. But really, kind of, again, I'll just speak for the 7 of us on our team. I just want them to know that I don't expect them to be 2 different people. And so I want to celebrate the engagement that happened on our team last week. I had a mom text me late last night, like the boys have been home with snow days for 3 days in a row. I think I just need to give them my full attention tomorrow. Yes, go do that. Like you're better for us when you're good for you. And I really want that to be true.
Danielle, thank you so much for today. This conversation reminds me why I love doing this so much. You're extremely articulate, extremely smart, and I thought we were just going to do you come check out the RV, but I'm so glad we actually sat down and did this. So
yeah, well, thank you so much for inviting me and welcoming my family. Like that set the table for, I think, what is just sort of really genuine conversation, but you got to see a little window into my life before we even had a chat.
I know. I love it. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.